All right, the breaking news this morning, CNN teams finding evidence of mass graves in Bucha, northwest of Kyiv. I know this is difficult footage to look at, but this is the evidence that our teams are finding on the ground. Bodies in bags littering the scene. This morning, new calls to remove Russia from the United Nations Human Rights Council. The group UN Watch has drafted a resolution for the UN General Assembly to force them out. And joining me now is the executive director of UN Watch, Hillel Neuer. Thank you so much for being with us. When you see these images out of Bucha, the bodies littering the streets, I'm just wondering what your reaction is.
Look, one thinks of atrocities that shock the conscience of mankind. And I'm here in Geneva, Switzerland, and have been spending the past 5 weeks at a session of the Human Rights Council, and Russia is sitting there as a member. For God's sake, Russia cannot be a member of the United Nations' highest human rights body.
What message does it send to the world when Russia sits on the Human Rights Council?
Well, I think it sends a terrible message because to be on the Human Rights Council, there are criteria. It's not automatic. It's not a rotation. It's not a regional thing that everyone gets. Countries have to show that they have a record. They're supposed to show that they have a record on promoting and protecting human rights. Members are obliged to uphold the highest standards of human rights, and countries that commit gross and systematic abuses can be removed. And in 2010, we led the campaign to remove Gaddafi's Libyan regime. And that succeeded after Gaddafi launched a war against his own people. We've now launched the same campaign against Russia. We've drafted a resolution. We need a member state to introduce it. We're turning to the United States. Secretary of State Blinken said sort of obliquely a month ago that asked the question when he spoke at the council whether a country that commits terrible acts should sit on the council. The Estonian foreign minister is on the record calling for it, but we need the United States to formally introduce the resolution.
What has the reaction been so far from the United Nations and officials there?
Well, sadly, and I would say strangely, when the spokesperson of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was asked last week about this, he said that they have a certain level of concern about our campaign. And he said, and there's 12 US senators that wrote a letter to the US ambassador calling for her to take action. And the UN chief said there's a certain level of concern, and he said it would set a dangerous precedent. Now, this is a very strange thing. The UN chief is not supposed to get involved. It's a member state issue. And for them to say it's a dangerous precedent, we think it's dangerous to let a government, a regime that is slaughtering innocent people, as we've seen now in these terrible images from Bucha, that has launched aggression against a UN member state, causing millions of people to leave their homes. We think it's dangerous to have them sitting on the UN's top human rights body. And there is no precedent because the precedent was set in 2011 when Gaddafi's Libyan regime was removed. So very strange reaction, if you ask me, by the UN Secretary General.
Look, their presence on this council is farcical. I don't mean that in a comical way. I mean, literally, it turns the whole notion of having a Human Rights Council on its head. Hillel Neuer, maybe there will be news today. Thank you very much for joining us, keeping us abreast of the situation.
Thank you.